Gardeners, it's been a few years since I've done a rose garden tour. It's April 9th today and roses are in full bloom, looking really good right now. So I thought I'd just take the opportunity to walk you through the rose garden, show you the different varieties, and then just speak to growing roses in our climate. So if you're new to the channel, I garden out here in the Phoenix, Arizona area, USDA Garden Zone 9B. Most of these roses have been in the ground for at least 4 years at this point. So they're fairly mature. I do have a couple young ones that I just planted that I'll show you as well. Logistics, I don't have them in the best setup. You can see that I have hardscape down at the bottom here. I have rocks. Despite having rocks around them, I do have a pretty nice well set up here, either using some kind of edging stone like you can see on this one, or riprap. You can also see that these roses get radiant heat because I do have a block wall just a couple feet away from their planting hole. So even in this harsh circumstance where they're getting a lot of heat, as our summers can get up to 120 degrees, these roses survive that. They don't look their best in summer, but they get through it. Spring and fall and even winter are when they look their best. Before jumping into each of the varieties, just want to quickly mention food, my fertilization now. Initially when I planted these roses, I was one of those people that didn't really know that Bayer was a bad product to use, how detrimental it is to bees and other beneficial insects. A few years ago I switched off of synthetic fertilizers that have pesticides baked into them, like Bayer, and moved to purely organic food. So what I do now for these roses is every month or so, I'll take a bag of alfalfa pellets that I get at my local Tractor Supply and just throw a handful or two into the berm essentially, and that alfalfa will break down and it provides a fairly balanced NPK for the roses. I'll supplement the bloom with some bone meal as well. So every third month or so, I'll go ahead and apply bone meal, just granular bone meal into the soil, work that in, and have found that to be great as far as vigor, health, and bloom set on the roses. So you don't need to go synthetic. So all these roses I'm going to mention are all hybrid tea roses, in exception to one. I like hybrid tea just because they provide a nice cutting style rose. And there's also a lot of variety in that class as far as color as well as fragrance level. So most of the roses I have do have anywhere between a medium and very strong fragrance level. So we have a red variety called Ingrid Bergman. I really like this rose for our area. You can see that it has a really nice formation on it. Good disease resistance on these. Stand up to our heat. And they do give off a nice fragrance. They're definitely not the most deeply fragrant red rose out there, but a nice all-around rose. So I actually have a couple of these in the yard. This is the exception, and you'll notice the difference on the shaping. It's more of a shrub type appearance, more sprawling in habit. The blooms are smaller, and you can see that there are multiple on each branch. It's not single stemmed. So this puts out a lot more blooms than a hybrid tea rose, but not as good for that cutting style. But certainly makes a beautiful bush. These have a nice fragrance as well. And this variety is called Deja Blue. This is a new addition, planted this last year. You can see the tag here. So this one's called Good as Gold. This is a variety I got from Heirloom, so Generally speaking, that's my go-to place to get roses online. I find them to be really healthy varieties. Never have had an issue with them. So this one starts out, you can see the new buds in almost kind of a deep orange color. And then as the bloom matures, it lightens to this peach and yellow tone. And so another thing to just note in our climate, the color saturation on the roses is going to be a little bit different than it would be in other parts of the country. And that's just the heat. Sometimes the heat can intensify a color, and sometimes it can actually even wash it out, depending on the rose variety. Another hybrid tea variety, this one is Perfume Delight. You can see a deep pink coloring on this. Nice warm blooms, and very fragrant. This is one of my more unusual roses. This one is called Spice Coffee. What I really like about this rose is in cooler times it has more of a lavender color. In the warmer times you can see it's got more of that beige peach color, which is really unusual to find on a rose. These also carry a really nice floral to citrus scent. This is a new one. This was bare root I put in just a few weeks ago. This is JFK, got from Jackson Perkins. I did have a JFK in the yard prior. One thing I'll say about that variety, or white roses in general, is they do not do well in our summers. They burn up. They're very sensitive to direct sun. So if you're going to plant that variety, I would definitely suggest putting it into an area where it's going to get partial shade all day, or at least afternoon shade. So after 10 a.m. So this one's got a really nice shady area because we have a large white sapote overhead casting shade on it. I also have this shade structure that's in place now that's helping out with that as well. In exception to this one, every other rose is in full sun at least part of the day and does fine. This is one of my favorite roses on color. This one's called Monica. Really pretty, vibrant orange color on this one. Not as vigorous of a grower. But certainly more unusual in the coloring. And we're now looking at Fragrant Cloud. You can see just tons of blooms on this, very productive on bloom set. Really beautiful color. So it's still a pink, but it has a little bit of orange mixed in there. And extremely fragrant, so if you're looking for a fragrant rose, this might be it. I wish you all could smell what I'm smelling right now. The fragrance in the yard is incredible with these roses. Nothing like you get when you pick up roses at a store, which actually tend to have no fragrance. So this one, Lasting Love, it's a very, very strong pink. When we get into extreme temperatures, this will move more to a red color. Really productive with blooms and very strong scent. Okay. This one is the classic Mr. Lincoln, one that is often sold at nurseries. All around great rose, high disease resistance, nice formation, and incredibly fragrant. One of my favorite varieties is Mr. Lincoln. Unfortunately, Zulu Royal, you can see it's probably got 60 buds on it right now. They're just all over the top. It's not actually in full bloom at the moment. just a small example of it, but this is a purple colored rose, which is pretty uncommon. And it keeps that purple color despite our heat. It doesn't wash it out. And this variety is South African. It does really well in our climate. It is also quite fragrant. Next door we have Chicago Peace. A really beautiful rose on coloring. You can see pinks and yellows and oranges. Now this one lacks fragrance, but definitely a beautiful formation on it. And unique color. Really don't know of any rose that compares to it. Alright, this is another newer plant. This one was put in last year. This one is Tropicana. So it has that more salmon color appearance. This one also has a nice fragrance to it. Firefighter. This is another heat tolerant variety, red rose, very, very fragrant. Slightly different fragrance than Mr. Lincoln. You know, you put this into a room in your house and it just fills the air. It's extremely fragrant. Here we have a Chrysler Imperial, another very fragrant red rose. Here I have another hybrid tea rose that's in a yellow color, and it's actually called the yellow. No fragrance to this one at all. But one thing I do like about this variety is it doesn't have thorns to it. Glossy leaves on it, and it stands up to our sun really well. Nice solid yellow color. Giver of Hope is one of those white cream type varieties of roses. This one really does struggle where it's at right now in full sun. Even with low to mid 90s, we see some burn around the edges. It just does not tolerate the heat well here. But it's a really beautiful large bloom. When we're in nice weather like 60s, 70s, 80s. It just doesn't like the 90s so much and above. Here we have another bush of the Ingrid Bergman. You just see it's covered. And this rose performs this way throughout the year. It's always in bloom. And here's the last one to mention, which is Wedding Bells. It's again a pink and white coloration on it. Not really fragrant, but it has more of that cup-like structure to the rose. Nice formation.